Good morning. Today is Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 at approximately 10:05 a.m. This is a meeting of the Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee meeting, which is part of the Board of Aldermen. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Evans. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Peel. Chair Tyus.
I didn't hear Alderwoman.
Here.
Chair Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Evans. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes from Wednesday, November 30th. I'd entertain a motion to pass out the minutes with a due pass recommendation. I'm sorry, to approve the minutes of Wednesday, November 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Evans. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel.
Aye.
Chair Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Evans. 5 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion that the minutes of Wednesday, November 30th, 2022 are approved. We're going to pick up kind of where we left off before. We're trying to get some understanding of what's going on with our different pots of money, where they've been, why they haven't been. Most of them have not. A lot of it hasn't been spent, which is really causing some pain to a lot of the aldermen who are reaching out to me. And so last week we had Mr. Flake, who I still says they need to cut half of what is up under him and put another division. That's too much. It's the same thing with public safety. I have recommended for the last 2 years that public safety be divided. It was one thing when the police were up in Jefferson City, but here that is too much work and it's too much under one person, and we need to divide that up. That's something we as the board can do in connection with working with the mayor. You can change divisions and things, so or departments, and we might need to do that. But we didn't end up having Mr. Bradley because I thought we weren't going to need him. But then his name kept coming up when we were talking about things. So I don't like to have conversations about people and then they're not here. So Jamie doesn't need to be here this time. And so we did need Mr. Flake to come back, and also Mr. Bradley. I want to get an understanding of what is going on with this money myself, because it just changes from day to day. I got an inquiry from the Riverfront Times, who I haven't heard from since I used to be the 20th Ward Alderperson. Ever since I came back, I didn't hear from them. Then all of a sudden, they wanted to know why the capital, what is it, War Capital Funds? No, it's not that. What is it called? St. Louis Works budget had not been passed. Well, so then they weren't interested in what my answer was, because I didn't get one in 2021. Nobody from the administration even offered to give me one. And then when I did get sent one by the director of streets, she wouldn't reply to me on many occasions. And I finally, I kept calling her saying, hey. So finally I sent her an email saying, I'm not introducing anything if we don't talk. If we don't have an understanding of what's going on with this budget, then I'm not introducing anything. And then so I was able to produce my emails and things like that. So the false narrative that Nancy Cross and the mayor's office are putting out is just false, because I don't want to hold our money. I want our money spent. And I don't understand why they keep trying to put out false narratives when they don't know what they're doing. So I finally, after all this time from March, she did not call me from the end of March, and that being she is the director of streets, until she finally sent me an email and said, oh, I called you back. And it was like in October or so, November, whatever. So we played, I think it was November, because we played telephone tag for a few days, a few weeks. And I finally talked to her Friday. And I did tell her that I would introduce the board bill that she had sent over to me, but that I still needed to talk to her because we don't have a 2021 bill. It was not submitted. And so she said, well, it's all in one bill. I don't know if that we can do that. And I was going back trying to find, had we ever done anything like that in the 30 years that I've been here? I've never seen that done. And so what the administration needs to say is, we don't know what we're doing. Stop trying to put stuff off on other people and just accept your responsibility, because you make mistakes when you're new. It's so much better that you say that rather than try to put it off on other people, because I will reply when I can to things. And so we don't know exactly what's going on, because I still haven't had a chance to talk to her, her being the director, about exactly why we didn't get one last year. And how do you break this out? And I do not sponsor and promote board bills that I don't know what's going on, because when I come before you and ask you to support a bill, I need to be able to answer questions. And if I come before you and I'm like, duh, I don't know what's going on. The mayor's office gave it to the director of streets, or the director of streets, or whatever. The director of operations gave it to the director of streets. Then they asked me to sponsor it, but they couldn't answer any questions. That would not be okay with me. You all know I asked a lot of questions, so I don't expect it to be okay with you or the full board that I would sponsor a bill that I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So we're going to try to get together in the next few days, but I am going to introduce the board bill, but I still want to know what happened to 2021. I'm not asking for these gentlemen to answer that, because we got a director of streets and I put that out to her, but I do want to know what's going on. But what I want to do is kind of make sure that we are understanding what kind of funds we're dealing with. Because we have two gentlemen here that are going to answer our questions, what I'm going to ask them to do is to unmute their mic, put up their right hand, and I'm going to give them an oath or affirmation of witness. Mr. Bradley. So pursuant to Article 4, Section 8 of the St. Louis City Charter, committee chair shall administer the oath to witness. You can either affirm or you can swear. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do also.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to kind of start with you, Mr. Flakes, and then, but if you, both of you are, Mr. Bradley, would you please leave your mic open, because this will be kind of a talking to both of you all. I'm really trying to get information, okay? Not trying to get you and got you, unless people try to get me, then I'll tell everything. And so, but if I don't have to, I look out for people, and actually will clean up messes that people make. The mayor knows that, all the messes that she's made that I've cleaned up quietly. So they should stop trying to get me and work with me. I don't want to falsely accuse anybody. I just want to know where our money is and how it's being spent, or why it's been held up. So the first thing I want to know is the 50/50 sidewalk fund. What is that properly called, or is it called the 50/50 sidewalk fund? And who administers that?
50/50 sidewalk fund is administered by city streets.
Okay.
Not really a fund directly. It just goes into our street director's office account, which is 510. And either capital or St. Louis funds can be put towards the 50/50 sidewalk program.
Okay. All right. So what is the St. Louis Works budget then?
The St. Louis Works budget is a 0.5-cent utility tax, and there's also a motor vehicle tax that goes through, I believe, the comptrollers. And every year they provide us a dollar amount of what's been collected and what the budget is.
Okay. To the comptroller, and every year they provide us, being the streets department. Is that correct?
That's correct. I typically set up the board bill and the budget, and then it goes to streets committee.
And so when you say they provide you what the budget is, excuse me, this ink pen, of course, ran out of ink. Let's try this one. I've learned a lesson. Throw ink pens away when they do not work. So when they provide you what the amount is the entire amount that we collect given to you is their percentage, do you know?
They don't, depending on what they foresee, in the last few years have been different because due to COVID, and it's a similar thing back in 08, 09, 010. If they foresee the next year will be a smaller collection amount for some reason, they may not give us the entirety in order to keep the budget similar. So I think 08, 9, 10, I don't remember what the dollar amounts were, but let's say, you know, in 08, each ward was getting approximately $100,000 per ward with a budget of, I think it was 4.5 million, 4.5 to 5 million. If the next year is anticipated to drop off for some reason, they try to, instead of just dropping, or instead of fully funding this year, they will take out a percentage, assuming next year will be lower. So then we can at least keep a consistent dollar amount. So instead of going full on $100,000 this year, knowing that next year the collection rate's going to be instead of 5 million, 4.2 million, or 100,000 per ward, they'll try to adjust that. So instead of going the full 100% or full $100,000 this year, and next year maybe we anticipate it being cut by, or the collection being cut by 20%, they'll try to drop that to where we're only putting or 90% into the budget. So then hopefully the year after we could be at 90% again. So long story short is so that this year St. Louis Works budget for the alderman isn't $100,000, and next year we're going to $60,000. This way, if we do this year at $85,000 and next year at 85, it's just a little more consistent. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of confusing, but
no, I understand. So they try to adjust for actual shortages or perceived shortages or anticipated shortages. Is that what you just said?
yes.
I actually, my minor is in accounting. Okay. So if we actually have an actual shortage, then what happens is we capture that with the next fund, and that will be taken out of that. Is that correct? Next year's fund. So let's just say 2001, we had a shortage of, let's say $500,000. That $500,000 would be taken out of 2022 before we start dividing the money to the aldermen. Is that correct?
I believe the money from the comptrollers is actually money in hand.
Okay.
But it's the perception that next year would go to 30% less than the collections for this year. So we would try to average that with the perception that next year is going to be down 20% or 30%.
Okay. And you don't have to answer this. Do you know why I didn't get a board bill or a budget for last year? If you don't know, that's fine. If you don't want to be in it, you don't have to. You can stay out of it. Sometimes it's good to stay out of things.
No, it was me. I mean, it's simple. 2021 was me. We were busy. I believe committee chairs at that point changed. Other mayors and other things were getting ready to change, and I was kind of busy. And I think it was probably May or June. I don't recall what month. Until it kind of came on my plate, or I remembered it was on my plate somewhere. And then at that point, it was kind of, we're already halfway through the calendar year. And by the time we got it in the budget, it would almost be time to do another board bill of the same.
Okay,
That's why I created it, I believe, in February of 2022.
okay, so I didn't get a first notice until I think it was March. I got my emails, okay, but you could have done it. So when you didn't do it in 2021, did you let anybody know? I know that there's a lot of new people, from the mayor to the director of operations to the director of streets. Did you tell anybody? Because you would have been the only person that would have really known that.
Yeah, it was known. I can't remember exactly who I told, but it was definitely known.
Okay, so you mean it wasn't me, that I just held up the money and didn't introduce that bill in 2021? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Because there was no bill to introduce?
That's correct.
Boy, that really doesn't fit with the lies that's coming out of room 200. Okay. Of course, when you lie, there's usually a way that people can trace it and find out what the truth is. That's what happened to Elliot Davis when the previous chair of streets and the previous president lied and said I was keeping the COVID money. In about 5 seconds, I was able to prove that wasn't true. And then Elliot had to run forward with retraction. So I'm pretty straightforward. If I'm holding something, I'll tell people why I'm holding it. I think you and I have worked together for a long time. I'm not a person that is will say, oh, I didn't hold it. If I'm holding it, there's a reason. So you sent it, so you let it was known to some people, okay, and we don't have to say who it was. And then you submitted a budget around.
It was February 28th, 2022. Okay,
Okay.
right here in front of me. And
Okay.
if you have a copy of the budget that was submitted in March, it should have that date on top of it.
Okay, and so that budget was for 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, so I couldn't find what we had done that. And I'm going to check with the city council and people. So, I'm just trying to figure out if that's legal. Do we have to break it out some kind of way where we say, well, this amount? So I told her on Friday, I'm introducing the budget, but we haven't had a chance to talk. And I need to be sure that we're doing it the right way, because I couldn't find, when I started to go back and I sat on streets since 91, I couldn't find that we had ever had double budgets like this. So I'm still trying to make sure that we're doing it the correct way, so we don't have to come back and say it's done wrong. And so it's almost time for a new budget to be introduced. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when do you anticipate that will be?
Kind of depends on how we do this. I believe, my opinion would be, assuming we can do 3 years, which I believe we can. I have not talked to city councilors, but I believe we can wrap all 3 years into one if we want to.
So you would want to amend the bill that I was sponsoring and put that new part on? Is that what we would do?
Honestly, it makes no difference to me whether we do a 2021, a 2022, and a 2023, or we group them all together in one 2023 package. To me, it makes no difference. So,
Well, to me, it wouldn't, as long as it's legal. That's the part that I always want. I want us to be able to do it legal. So you have it, so you would have the numbers now. If we can do more than one, if we could do all three, then we can do that and get it out. Is that correct?
I would have to reach out for comptrollers for the current budget, but yes.
Okay, so even though I'm introducing it Friday, it could be Center Streets, we can do a committee substitute and add that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now, is there any other pots of money? I know we have a pot of money for parks. Okay, is there another pot of money beside the 50/50 sidewalk and the St. Louis Works budget that you administer?
It would just be the ward cap and St. Louis
Okay.
Works.
The ward capital and what else?
St. Louis Works.
Okay, and parks, you don't do that. That's through forestry?
That is
Okay.
parks, forestry, recreation. Yes.
Okay, now, so I did, go ahead. Did you have something else you were going to say? Okay, I did get your list about, the streets that were paved, and we will get to that in a minute. But the reason I wanted Mr. Director Bradley to be here, because his name came up several times when we were talking about the money. But before we get to him, so tell me about ward capital. What happens with that? How does that work?
Ward cap gets directly deposited into, or once an alderman chooses where they want it to go, it is directly deposited into a ward account. That could be either for paving, for sidewalks, for dumpsters, for street trees, parks money. So yeah, once an alderman decides where they want it to go, it's directly deposited into that account. As mentioned last week, that is kept very ward specific versus St. Louis Works, which is not. And then typically the work's done.
Okay. So St. Louis Works is not ward specific and ward capital is.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And so once it's in that account, if the alderman then changes their mind about what they want to do, then they have to do a transfer and that has to go through E&A. Is that correct? You know about, I'm sure. Right.
It has to be a ward transfer, and I believe those have to go through E&A.
Okay.
That is correct. It would have to go through E&A.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bradley, the only time you would really deal with ward capital if they put something in that needed to be done by BPS. So if I wanted to do curbs and you would have to bid that out, is that when your department gets involved?
That's correct. So as the contracting agency for the city, there are a couple things we're talking about here that we're involved with. So first of all, handle the one you're talking about. So during your budget hearings, as the street commissioner just indicated, if you were to put money in your 900 account and you were to identify projects like curbs, sidewalk, some things like that, then we would contract that out to engineering firms and contractors to build. Also, to go back on the 50/50 sidewalk program, although that contract is administered by the street department, BPS actually handles the bidding of those contracts. And those are actually board letting contracts that are put out at the request of the street department. So currently we have two 50/50 sidewalk contracts. They were put into place in October and they each were about $900,000. And Kent, you can correct me plus or minus on those. And then when the street department exhausts the funding in those contracts, typically they will come back and request that we rebid those out. And then we put them out on the street. They're open bid for anyone who meets the criteria to bid them.
Okay. And did you say we have the bids been accepted or we just put them out?
No, they've been accepted. We have two contracts
Okay.
currently in place and working.
Okay. So, the St. Louis Works budget, what is that about, Mr. Flake? What does that do?
I don't understand the question. St. Louis Works budget is the half-cent utility tax and motor vehicle tax, and that can be used for.
And I'm sorry, what is it used for? I guess it's a specific question.
Typically, it's used for street paving, 50/50 sidewalk program are the two big contenders. Sometimes aldermen choose to use part of it for dumpsters, for LED upgrades. Really anything in the right of way they can use it for, as far as street infrastructure.
And that's a great disservice to the aldermen that they would have to use money for dumpsters, because we and you and I and Mr. Bradley all know that all this time that city is responsible for those dumpsters, and especially in 2017 when we went from 11 to 14, there's a tape of former Alderman Bosley and former Alderman Conway, who sponsored the bills, saying, now we will make sure that we pay for the dumpsters. So any alder people who are paying for your dumpsters, I want you to know that is a city function that they should be doing it, okay? I'm going to tell everything. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here, but I'm a great resource because I was around from the beginning. So we know that is not what's supposed to happen, but they often get leaned upon because the city's not putting our full amount of money that we get from fees that we get from the payment of $14. Only $3 goes into I guess it's called a special account. It's what is the name of the same thing that the airport has. So it goes, only $3 of the $14 goes into the account. The other $11 go into into the general revenue. Isn't that true?
I'm not sure. That's the refuse side of things. That's one thing I
Okay.
don't have.
Well, I
under
can
my-
tell you it's true. Okay. We only do the $3. And in fact, it's if you go to the last ordinance that we passed, and that being Conway and Boyd, they bring that up to attention in there that now this $3 will go into the special account. And I think that we should take all of it so that we'll have enough money, and so that aldermen won't be leaned upon to spend their ward capital or their St. Louis Works to buy dumpsters. Okay, is there anything that you would have to do with St. Louis Works money, Mr. Bradley?
So the only thing that St. Louis Works funds for my staff is on the BPS side. It provides funding for the ward liaisons that work with each of you. It
Okay.
provides some funding for bridge repairs that come out throughout the year. And then on the equipment services division side, it provides funding for equipment repairs, as Mr. Flake noted, such as pavers, milling equipment, and other things that, you know, are ancillary to the street paving program.
I'm sorry, so ward liaisons, paving for equipment, paving, equipment and mowing equipment. What else did you say? I was trying to take notes.
Miscellaneous bridge repairs.
Okay. And how many liaisons do you have right now for the city?
I'm sorry.
How many liaisons are there for the city to the alder?
So currently, the way it's set up is there are 3 people on the planning and programming staff with a manager that oversees them, and they handle the 28 wards that are currently in place.
So the manager is one of the 3 people.
No, the manager is a 4th person.
Okay,
There's a program manager, an engineering manager, a program manager, and 2 ward liaisons by title.
well, did you say an engineer manager? Is that what's the first one?
Yes, ma'am. That would be
Okay.
John Kohler.
Okay.
And then a program manager, which is Stephanie Doss. And
Mhm.
then 2 ward liaisons, which are Andrew Regante and Donald Williams.
So Regante and Williams are basically got 14 wards each right now.
Correct.
So that's a lot of work to do. And so that slows things down. Would it help if you had 3 or 4 liaisons? Because I remember when the program started, and you weren't the director of BPS when it started, because we started. So in '94, we started collecting the money, and I want to say they had 4 or 5 liaisons. So I was shocked when I came back to the board and what had happened to it. Would it make it, would we be able to spend money faster if we had another liaison at least once? And I know it's kind of late now because we're going to 14, but it's still going to be that same amount of area that we have to deal with.
So I could say this, that it's always better to have more people, but I think what really slows the process down is the process itself. And so we have done everything in that process to try to speed it up by doing a citywide contractor, which is task order based, so that, and I will mention that when I started here 35 years ago, they bid these projects out individually as they came in on the ward program. And as you know, that is an extensive amount of time. So we
Right.
did a citywide contract, and then it's task order. And then it's just a matter a lot of times of, is the funding in the right pot to spend? So if the money's in a 900 account, then it usually can get programmed relatively quickly and go into the queue for construction. If it's not, then it's usually delayed until it goes for a transfer to ENA.
Okay. And when it goes to a transfer for ENA, how long does that usually take?
So it depends on when ENA meets. So if you happen to request a transfer the week before an ENA meeting, well, then it would be relatively quickly. If you requested it right after one, it could be up to 30 days.
Okay. So right after it could be up to 30 days, did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Now, I
then
know
what-
ENA has been meeting a little bit sooner with this administration than in the past, so, or more often, I should say. But, yes, that takes time. So I would ask very respectfully if you would all consider putting the funding into the accounts up front. It helps with your foresight to help us expedite the process.
So you said, what was before the 30 days? You said another time, if you have to go to ENA, if you don't, what's the time? If you put it up in the original beginning, how many, I can't talk this morning.
Right.
How much time does it take then?
It really depends on when the request is made in reference to when the ENA meeting is scheduled. We try to put it onto the next ENA meeting, but there is also a due date before ENA that is put upon us. So if it's requested the day before ENA, usually we're not allowed to put things on ENA a day before. It's within a few days prior to. So it really depends on when it's requested.
Well, I kind of, little birdie told me that they can be put on if two of the 3 members allow it, but that's why you say usually, because if it's something that really they think needs to be done, they can suspend those rules and get it done. Okay. So, Mr. Flake, this, you gave me this thing of the paving, the printout. Is there anything on here that cannot be shared? Because otherwise I'm going to share it with all the aldermen and put it on the Google Drive. Is there something secret that we shouldn't be sharing?
Nope, share away.
Okay. So I want to get to, I haven't had a chance to look at that because that came yesterday. I want to get to, back in February, we passed early March, I think it was February, we got it done by February. We passed Board Bill 184, which was mostly about ARPA funds, but tucked away in there, there was some surplus capital funds and of $7.6 million. And I was able to capture that money and it went to North St. Louis, specifically Riverview, I-70 to Circle, 1.25 traffic calming to, let's see, Kings Highway. So on and on, Goodfellow, Natural Bridge, sprinkler repair. And so as I understand it, none of those streets, and then we also had in the ARPA funds, Union was supposed to be paid from Enright to West Florissant, Grand from Holly Hills to Hall Street, Kings Highway from Gravois to Florissant, Jefferson from Chippewa to Choteau, and Goodfellow from Delmar to Hall's Ferry. And so I'm trying to figure out, did any of that get done?
So I can comment on that, Kent, if you'd like me to. Thank you. So what we're in process of doing it, and I need to give a little bit of an explanation on all those items. So what we looked at those items, we put out an RFQ on the street, request for qualifications. We had 3 responses from 3 different consultants. We did a consultant selection and we are hiring all 3 consultants to work on those projects for us. Now, I want to get into a little more detail on that.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. You looked at the items, you then put out a RFP.
An RFQ. For a consultant.
RFQ, okay. And you got 3 people that accepted or responded.
3 people that have turned in statements of qualifications
Okay.
and have went through the process. We've selected to do the design work. Now,
So you selected all 3 of those people.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Now, we did this because you are probably aware that the mayor's office turned in a most recent board bill, and it had to do with traffic calming. And that traffic calming for $40 million had some additional funding for ADA and traffic calming improvements with the 5 corridors identified in Board Bill 184. And there was $14.5 million in this most recent board bill. I believe it was board bill number 120. So the idea is that rather than just go out and pave these streets, what we are going to do is to not only look at the streets, pave them, look at traffic calming, look at the curbs, look at the sidewalks, look at, ADA accessibility on those routes all at the same time, so that what we can come up with is a finished type product, as opposed to just a paving and then curbs are low or sidewalks are broken or whatever. So we're going to take a holistic approach at this. And that's why we've hired these 3 consultants to work with us on this.
So you know that you and I had to deal with Natural Bridge. I'm kind of really disappointed in what I'm hearing, because did you talk to any of the alder people who represent these communities to tell them what's going on? Or did anybody do that? Because I know I represent a good portion of it and nobody even told me. I'm the chair of streets of what's going on. This is the first time that I'm hearing of this, and that's very disappointing to me, because that's not, to me, good communications, okay? And me and you know what happened with Natural Bridge and how I had to step in to help clean that up, okay? And so that's not what I want to happen anymore. And I'm not gonna speak to it, but you and I know. So I don't understand why you would just not have conversations with the aldermen who have been waiting patiently, thinking their stuff was moving along. And I see you, Alderwoman Howard. I'll let you ask questions in a second. Why there wasn't any conversation?
So we will have conversations as part of the design process. We will include the alder people in the process and get their comments and their thoughts as we go through it. But we have to hire the consultants first before we do that.
So I think communication would be, this is what we're planning to do. So I want to go back to what you said. You said the mayor's office recently introduced a traffic calming plan, right?
A board bill including traffic calming components. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what is that board bill? Do you know?
I believe it's 120.
Okay, and so, but this bill 184 was passed in February.
Yes.
So it just sat there all this time to wait for the mayor to come up with an idea of what she was going to do, instead of, because we lost critical paving. Like maybe I would say, I don't want to do curbs. Now I wouldn't say that, but just let's say I didn't, because there's parts in my community that the people are getting their cars tore up. So even if we had to do it again, because I know this is getting ready to happen around the stadium, the new soccer stadium, why weren't we given that option? And it's not just us, because we're also looking at Grand Avenue from Holly Hills to Hall Street and on and on and on. So how is it that the alderwoman from the 17th gets that option, but the rest of us don't?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. So my question is, were you instructed not to do anything?
No.
Okay, so you made the decision just not to wait. What were you waiting around for? Because the mayor had not introduced, this is, board bill 120. We're talking about February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. We're talking 9 months later. So did you know that such a bill was coming and you were just going to wait? And that's my question, because it seems like you would have had to have some kind of ESP if you just sat on it for 9 months.
So there were a lot of conversations, to be very honest about this, between my department and the street department about paving these items, paving these streets. And the conversation kept coming back about issues with curbs. And you and I spoke a couple times about curb work throughout. There was conversations about what would have to happen in order to, accommodate that. And it was back and forth throughout the summer, but there was also a big conversation for many months from the mayor's office about traffic calming, and this bit about, we need to do a citywide traffic calming study and mobility study and, all the issues with traffic calming. And so the conversation is, between myself and the mayor's office and the street director, was we need to figure out what we're going to do with traffic calming. Is it going to play a role in these corridors? Is it not? It was just a very, very open conversation. And so it morphed into this board bill that was turned in. And as I mentioned, $14.5 million in additional traffic calming would be in this board bill if it gets passed. And it would affect those 5 corridors that were in Board Bill 184. And so it just how it transpired into way. Nobody sat and did nothing. It was active conversations the entire time.
Oh, yeah, but active conversation. Let's talk about what we're talking about curbing. We have talked about curbing because when I came back here in 2013, I requested curbing that I had on the board to get done before when I was the 24th alderperson. This is about to be 2023. And the guy who sits down there in the Office of Disabled kept sending stuff saying you can't do this because the law requires this, but MoDOT said that wasn't true. So I then called the federal government. They said it wasn't true. And everybody has said it wasn't true. And he based this on something that was going to get passed under the, it started with Obama, didn't get passed then, and then it didn't get passed under the Trump administration. So I have been waiting, and I got $1 million and something sitting up there waiting because, oh, we can't do it because he's saying that and you guys didn't do it. So that was the conversation I was having. I was not having conversations about these other things because I didn't know. And I find that I am, again, very irritated. Yeah, I know. So Joe has to go at 11. I am actually going to have to recess at 11 because the new president, in violation of agreement we had, put a meeting after this so close that it doesn't give you a time to have a meeting. So I'm going to recess and we're going to come back. But I want to make this clear. I was not talking about all of this stuff that didn't get done on this. I was talking about my $1.5 million whatever I got sitting up there to do them in my ward that should have been done a long time ago, in which mayors play games with, not you, but mayors play games. So I'm going to let some other people talk because there's no way you could have known this traffic calming when it was going to come. And I still think that is a great mistake, if not purposeful, because if you were doing that, the chair of street should have been sitting at that table. And you and I had this conversation before. And so I'm irritated. So I'm going to recognize Alderwoman from the 14th who has her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this question is for you, Mr. Bradley. You know, Board Bill 118 cites improvements to South Kings Highway, and I don't know if you're aware that previously we did a traffic study with the previous 13th Ward Alderwoman and the 12th Ward Alderman. And I guess my concern is if we're going to study these again, why are we throwing good money after bad when we already have a study in place? And I don't know how much we spent on it. I can't recall that at the time, but it took all 3 of us to contribute toward that. There is a plan out there, and I don't know what the consultants are here to do, but I get a little frustrated when I see money being spent that's already been spent. And as the Alderwoman from the first said, nobody's talking to us. I called and I asked, are these plans going to be the same as what we have? And I got sort of a, yeah, we think so. But as an elected official and a keeper of, I guess, a representative of my people, I feel it's my obligation to be a good steward of how these funds are spent, our ward capital. But when there's not a conversation, I'm out here wondering, okay, are they going to do another study that has already been done? Are we going to brush that off, take it off the shelf and use it? Or are we starting all over? And I just don't understand why there hasn't been some conversation with those people that have already had some things in place. Can you address that? Why, there hasn't been some sit down, here's what we're going to do. or we're starting all over, that study is outdated. I guess that's my question. How are we proceeding with this?
So what I would say to that is that previously, the way things were handled were on a ward basis, and we would work with the alder persons to do a traffic study for a particular section of corridor. And as you went from one section of one corridor of a street to another, traffic calming may change depending on what the particular, street composure, the neighborhood, those type of things, there will be different solutions to the problem. And so what we've hired consultants to do is to review the existing traffic studies that are completed and to take those and to come together with a citywide traffic calming solution, if you will, or a citywide traffic calming set of solutions, so that it's not just an a la carte solution per neighborhood, but there's actually a set of standards for the entire city. And then turn that into a design that we can actually implement and build. As you are aware, a study is not an engineering design, and I can't bid a study. So it still has to be designed. And so this is an approach to take a holistic look at these corridors together to see what the studies showed that had in common, to see what the studies showed that were different, and to come up with a holistic solution to the problem. And as you all mentioned, yes, you will be included in that discussion when we get to that point. We're not there yet.
I guess, you will be using the studies that have taken place, and where there are no studies, you'll be filling in with some assessment of what needs to be done, and have some continuity across all of our streets and byways is what the goal is here.
That's correct.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. It's just that when we're talking about doing studies, I feel like, well, if we're going to spend all kinds of money on studies, I think we have enough studies sitting on shelves. Take one down, pass it around, and see if you'll like it. And I really, as a elected official, feel it's my responsibility to say, whoa, wait a minute, And I appreciate the mayor being concerned about this, but I'm not sure she's aware of all the studies that have taken place and the amount of time many aldermen have spent in some of the ward capital they put into these already. And then, are these being ignored? Are they going to be addressed? And I feel as though we've been taken out of the picture.
Actually, that's a great comment, because that is why it has taken us months to discuss all of this before a board bill was sent in place. A listing of every study that has been completed in every neighborhood, a listing of those that are have been requested but are not completed. All these items have been talked about in conjunction with this idea of a citywide mobility study and how we get there. And yes, you're correct. There are a lot of studies, and some of them are similar and some of them are different. And the idea here is to come together with one set of plans or a couple sets of plans and details to go forward, so that, again, you don't go from one neighborhood to another and you're constantly looking at different things, because that is very confusing for drivers as well as the general public.
Well, I mean, just for example, we look at the balls in one neighborhood, and then you've got some people have tried the roundabouts, and it's just, to me, sort of a patchwork quilt that, maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And I don't purport to be a traffic engineer, but I do need help, and I think that we should be, in on how this is, whether I have input or not. But when you go through the motions of getting input from the neighborhoods and your constituency. And then all of a sudden, the press is saying, oh, we're going to do a citywide study. And, the impression is all of the work that's been done is thrown out the window. And, some of my constituents have said, well, what happened to the study we did? So there was not, I guess, an effective way of communicating that to us so that we could say, hey, yeah, they're going to use that. So, and it's no slight against you, but there should have been some method of communication with everyone. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Alderman Vaccaro, I know you and I both have to leave in about 4 minutes since the new president violated our agreement about when we would have meetings. Do you have a question, or do you want to ask questions when we come
No,
back?
I really don't. But I'm fine being in both meetings. So, because after that, I have that event, I think, I don't know who else going to that, but.
I'm not going to have both meetings at the same time. I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, I'm
And
just saying,
I think Alderwoman Howard has to go. So we're not even going to have a quorum since she did it this way. And I intend to make an objection. We agreed a long time ago that we would give a couple of hours between each meeting so we would not be stepping on each other's meetings. And then to put this in the middle like this, and you were gracious enough to not do public safety, but it should not have been done.
no,
So
we had agreed that,
right.
we talked
would
and you
give some
agreed not to
time.
hear your bill.
right, exactly, because you have to hear bills and you don't want this. This is what we used to do, and we worked away for that not to happen. Alderwoman Swise, I'm sorry, but you can start out, but at 11 o'clock, I'm gonna have to recess to go to personnel, and then we will come back probably, hopefully within the half hour, 45 minutes, but I'm going to go to that meeting because I'm on it. And so you go ahead and start asking your questions until we until we come back. Until we recess, and then we will come back.
Thank you so much. I'm also on that 11 a.m. Meeting. I think we need to start our committee meetings. We can try it earlier in the day. Let's do like an 8.
No, what we did, no, we actually had an agreement. Don't put a meeting any closer than 2 hours, okay?
Yeah.
Because, and so she violated that, okay?
I
So go
appreciate that. My question really has to do a lot with Alderman Howard's line of questioning. I'm in the same boat as her. I think we've been putting money towards projects in our wards since I've been an alderperson. The Kings Highway study laid out how much money we might need, and we've been working towards that. Meeting with people in the past, it was like, yep, start putting money in, we'll get moving on this project. And, I don't want to see a ton more delays on the actual construction and work, because we have accidents, people have died at the intersection in my ward at a turn that was supposed to be addressed in the study. I think that consistent across the city solutions absolutely make sense. And I also know that we are time limited with these ARPA funds. The millions of dollars that have been put towards repaving Kings Highway, and this additional money that's been put in the proposed board bill for repaving Kings Highway, among other streets that have, the traffic funding, the traffic plans that have been studied along various corridors. That's all going to be, we have to spend it by December of 2026. The Kings Highway study was done in 2019, completed in 2019.
Yep.
And then, it's 2022 already. So it's just, I don't think that if we don't have shovels in the ground soon, that it's possible to do everything that we want to do. So I understand setting standards along, okay, this is the type of traffic calming we're going to use. This is our library of things that are available, and going forward with that library. But I also think that it has to, we just got to move quickly. And I'll have more questions later. And I appreciate this time to talk right before we go to recess. Thank you both, Ken Flake, Rich Bradley, for being here. I appreciate your work.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's at 10:59. I have to go to personnel. I'm going to recess this. I don't know how long this is going to take, so I'm going to say I hate to do it to noon, but that's what I have to do. And so we're going to come back here at noon, and restart this meeting.
Madam Chair, could we Could we ask that it be 1 o'clock instead of noon, just to make sure?
Sure, because I forgot. I was trying to do public safety, but I forgot. We're not doing public safety because he did cancel public safety.
Right, and I'm I'm being an event until 1. right
Okay.
after that. So it might be 1:30 or 2 before I can join back in.
Okay, but if we start at 1, because I still got lots of questions, then you can join us.
I'll just join in late, that's all.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna recess until 1 o'clock because we have at least 1, 2, 3, 4 people that have to go to personnel, okay?
I won't be able to join at 1, but I'll definitely watch the meeting afterwards.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, if you're watching, if there's any chance you can jump in and ask questions, I want questions answered. I'm shocked that we have waited 9 months and then we're saying we're not doing it. That shocks me, and nobody told me anything. So.
Excuse me, could we move it to 2 p.m.?
No, we're not gonna move it to 2. We're gonna do 1. And so if we could come back at 1 o'clock, we're gonna recess to 1. Thank you. Okay? STL TV, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. We are recessed until 1 p.m. Thank you. Thank you. This is we recessed for a couple of hours from the street meeting, and we are now back from recess. We don't have to call roll or do any of those things because we're continuing our meeting. We do have 4 people here of the 6 that were there. And so we may get another one, but right now we don't have to even worry about a quorum because we had a quorum when we left, and we were going to continue having questions for the 2 gentlemen. I hope you guys were able to get some lunch. Good. Okay. That's great. If people only knew how aldermen run and try to eat and do a meeting at the same time. Sometimes when you turn off that camera, you're trying to get a meeting in. Hold on just a moment. This is Alderwoman Boyd. I'm sorry, that was Alderwoman Boyd, and she's on her way back. So I'm glad that you guys were able to get something to eat, and we're going to resume our meeting back. And unfortunately, Alderwoman Schweitzer had someplace else she had to be. Alderman Carl, so he may come back in, and we'll just do the best we can. I had kind of made some comments about why we didn't let the aldermen know what was going on. You said the mayor had this calming thing, Mr. Bradley, this calming bill that just came out, street calming bill, but still that didn't come out to just a few weeks ago, a week ago. I got to look at when it was introduced. For all this time, we're sitting here thinking our bills are being, our projects are being forwarded, are getting done, or we're being worked on. And again, I don't see why there was no communication saying, hey, we're not doing anything on these. Do you want us to do something on it? Because even though the mayor has a calming bill, this was already passed in legislation and has nothing to do with her bill that may or may not get passed. What if it doesn't get passed? Then we've sat on stuff all of this time and we haven't got anything done, and we missed a paving season. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Bradley? Can both of you all unmute, please?
So as I mentioned, there have been conversations going on since before Board Bill 184 was passed about the citywide traffic calming conversation. We started talking about proceeding with street department on paving these corridors. But as I mentioned before, very respectfully, our plan was, once this conversation came up, we did not want to proceed with paving a street and then possibly having to go back and tear out new work, either to do curbs, traffic calming, or any type of improvements there. So everything was, put to a point where we're waiting to see what happens with this next board bill. If this next board bill doesn't pass, then we are not going to be able to do that portion of the work. We will regroup with our consultants, get a plan together, and go from there.
Mr. Bradley, so
Yes,
that
ma'am.
does not address what I'm saying. What I said is, and I will say it again, there was nothing preventing you from speaking to, especially the people whose wards these were, which from north to south, telling us what was going on, or the mayor's office. Nobody did that. That's a mistake. And then to say, well, we're going to pass this bill, that is what has happened. And I can speak from North St. Louis for everything that is supposed to be going on in North St. Louis, from the quarter money to the $500. There is nothing that we see going on. And as the chair of streets, I am really irritated that you all didn't ordain, after how I looked after you for Natural Bridge, that you didn't ordain to have a conversation with me. And then what happens when all this stuff sits up? And the mayor's office is going to get a earful. Then they try to put stuff on me like, oh, Sharon Tyus is holding it up, when you guys have been holding it up and you didn't let us know. And I'm telling my people call me and I say, well, they're working on it. They're getting the stuff. And a simple conversation is, we're talking to the mayor's office. We're talking about not paving and holding off on that until we look at the curbing. But here's the thing. That may or may not get done, and you've already wasted 9 months. And if it doesn't get done, you've wasted another amount of time. So what are we going to do about the people who are having hubcaps come off, tires getting punctured, all of that? To me, that is not good communication and doesn't indicate to me that you or the mayor's office want to work with the Board of Aldermen. It's like we are just like disregarded, and that really irritates me. So I think it's a mistake. I'm going to say you're taking a hit that belongs to somebody else. I don't believe you sit up there and just said, oh, let me make this decision because I don't want to talk to the alderman. I think that you have more political savvy than that. They don't. And they don't understand that people are looking at what's not getting done. Okay. And if that's your tires that are getting punctured, or your alignment is getting messed up, and you guys have not sent out something to us saying we're working on this plan, and neither did the director of streets, and neither did the director of operation, and neither did, we have a lobbyist to the board. All of that does not speak well for working with the board. And I don't know why I would pass anything about a traffic calming when you've held up my stuff for 9 months and didn't ordain to speak to me. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, same thing for you, Mr. Flake. Okay, I don't know, and I think you guys are here because you're just the face of somebody else. But I will be bringing them back in to talk to them because I don't understand that. Nobody, and I want to ask the committee: did anybody get any kind of notice at all? And I'm going to start with you, Alderwoman Howard. Did you get any kind of notice about your streets that's involved or your plans?
No, ma'am. Just the board bill and, some of the some of the, I guess, innuendos around spending the ARPA funds, but I haven't gotten, I reached out and talked with Mr. Kohler, and he said he thought so, but I just felt as though that we were left out of the process completely. And I don't blame Mr. Bradley. I just think there's just a big gap in communication between us and the administration.
Okay, Alderwoman Boyd, were you notified? You got a nice chunk of money that's in here between the ARPA funds and the capital fund surplus. Were you notified about your money in any way?
No, I wasn't notified.
Did you hear that
I-
they were, wait a minute, did you hear that they were holding this money for 9 months because the mayor now came up with this traffic calming plan for the whole city? And so they didn't do anything with the money, even though we missed paving season. Did you hear that?
No, what I did hear was, because I reached out to Rich and said, what's going on with my project? Because I was contacted and said it was shovel ready. And so I kept saying, well, what's going on with the contract? And then that's how I found out about the other piece. And I'm like, well, why would I be penalized if mine is ready to go? So I'm just kind of concerned because it seems like we're on the short end of the stick again. We're not getting, we had the money that was allocated and it didn't happen. And I'm not blaming Rich or Ken, but I'm just like, somebody needs to stop and say, wait a minute, let's connect with the older people so they are aware of what's going on. Because with that Goodfellow project, people were calling like, okay, you said we got the money. They said it's shovel ready, but nothing's happening. And so then they came back, well, it won't happen to the spring because now we're waiting on something else. I was like, this is not good to me, because I just feel our communities, the North Quarter, is losing again.
Okay, so you were not notified. Alderman Bosley, were you notified in any way? Are you there, Alderman Bosley?
I am. No, ma'am, I was not notified.
So you have quite a bit. Grand Avenue. Let me see what else you have. You have something else in here. So we're talking about the art. Remember when I moved up? Let me turn this down.
What, I know I have grant funding put into the board bill, the infrastructure bill.
The 184, and then I took some more money for us. I gave you $500,000 for Natural Bridge, which was the capital fund improvement surplus, so that if you wanted to do some different things, considering all the pushback we had got with Natural Bridge, I put $500,000.
You're getting a lot of feedback, Alderwoman, and
I don't
it's
think
really
it's good.
hard to understand.
Alderman
what's going on.
Bosley, can you? I turned mine down. Is that okay? So. Okay, so I then put $500,000, Alderman Bosley, in the 3rd Ward and another $500,000 in the 21st Ward for Natural Bridge, if whatever things you wanted to do with that. So I'm understanding that nobody gave you any update about what was going on with this money. And I don't know if you heard, but again, this money has been passed out back in February. It's been sitting there for 9 months. And the testimony we just had was that, well, the mayor came with this traffic calming idea 9 months later. And in the meantime, nobody's told us anything. And they've just let our money sit up there without reaching out to anybody. And I told them I thought that was pretty lousy. And it doesn't encourage me to want to work with the traffic calming. And you've just for no reason held our money up, okay? And you at least could have had a conversation with each alderman saying, is this something you want? The mayor talking about what she's gonna bring later, that is everything they do. They do it with LRA, they do it with the ARPA funds, every single thing, we're gonna get to it. The city does not run on one of these days, we're gonna get to it. So there's been no conversation with you about that money at all. Is that right?
No, ma'am, not to my recollection.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Alderwoman Peel. Are you here? Okay. Alderwoman Peel.
Excuse me.
Okay. Now you and I had a conversation where you are getting some pavement in front of the stadium, the new stadium, right? Is that right? Or maybe somebody else told me that.
The stadium is not in the 17th ward.
Okay, well, somebody is getting new pavement in the 17th ward. I mean, in the front of the stadium, whoever it is. It is in the 6th, do you know? You don't, if you don't know, that's okay.
Oh,
That's a question. I believe it is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, but so you don't, I don't know if you have any, do you have any money? Let me see, Grand Kings Highway. Yeah, you have some of Kings Highway as part of the ARPA funds. Had anybody talked to you? Because I know you guys were putting a traffic calming plan together already. And I believe the 28th and the 18th had kind of already worked out their traffic plan, because I saw it, because I'm working on mine now. And nobody approached you and said, hey, this may be amended or changed or anything?
I wasn't spoken to regarding that.
Okay, so now my question becomes, so the mayor got this new thing comes out. Thank you, Alderwoman. So what if it is in conflict with what we've already agreed on, and where the aldermen have already, like with, I know Mr. Kohler, he's worked on this traffic calming for Kings Highway, and I was getting ready to take it down the rest of Kings Highway. What happens if that now is in conflict with what the aldermen have already spent their money on? How does that work?
So the way I would sum it up is, as I explained before with Alderwoman Howard, the idea would be is to take the study that has already been completed, take all the studies that have been completed, which in those 5 corridors that we're looking at, and see what the recommendations are, and see what the common points are, and see what things work for all those areas, and have continued conversations with the alderpersons in order to come up with a holistic approach, as opposed to a ward by ward approach, which is obviously what we always did in the past, because that's where the funding was available. And so, again, the idea is to try to make this a citywide program where we would come up with a set of standards and so forth. And so if it's in conflict to it, I mean, obviously there would have to be a lot of discussions, because the studies are what you and your ward want. So there would have to be some very deep discussions on what the problem is and what the proposal is and what could be done, you know, to come to some common ground. I think it's going to take a bit of time to get there. This is not something that could happen overnight, but I would also say that the idea is to get, once we get that approach together, to get together some plans and specifications to build these projects, because as you all know, a study is exactly what it is. It's a study and it's a set of recommendations. It is not an engineered set of drawings for construction. So this takes it to the next level.
Okay, so what I would say to you is the 28th and the 18th already spent their money, was working together. Hey, you guys already put this plan together. In fact, it was sent to me, because then that would be a lot of Kings Highway already. And then we already know the hospital already did that. So to me, that makes no sense at all, because I've been around here too long, that wouldn't have got done, okay? Because they've already worked together. They're going to do that in connection with what the hospital already did. So to me, that's just unfair, bad planning, and definitely non-communication for that to happen. And as I said, I can't wait to see this. I'm going to look at this, but the best thing for us to do is to vote no on this and tell you to get to work now on our things. And I'm going to be looking to have another meeting with you and whoever else come up with these people who have responded to what was it, request for
qualifications.
Okay, and I want to know who they are, and I want to see their answers. So I'm going to be looking for all of what they put in, and I want to see what their response is and what our initial request for qualifications and when all of that went out. Because again, that makes no sense that something got passed back in February, and then we sat through the entire paving season and we did absolutely nothing. And this seems so political to me, and it is not a good idea, because it's going to all wash back on the mayor, not the alderman, because we got this passed. And this is just an additional thing of people not knowing what they're doing and not having a conversation. And if that was what the mayor wanted, she should have sent Kevin Bailey and Nancy Cross out to talk to us, even if you did, okay? But as I said, I believe that was not wanted on the part of the mayoral administration, and that just really irritates me. Non-communication does not work. And that's why we had to go back on Natural Bridge and do a lot of things. And you know the stuff that I had to go through, and I calmed it all down. And it was not because of non-communication. It was because I communicated and reached out to some people who were really willing to do some other things, and I calmed it down. So I'm very disturbed that people think this is how you deal with people across the city. So we're looking at Carroll Howard down all the way to the end of Kings Highway 1 end. And then, I'm sorry, Alderwoman from the 14th, and I go all the way to the other end. And in the middle is the Alderwoman from the 17th. And we get no communications about that. That is wrong. Okay, I don't care if somebody told you to do it or you just did it, that is clearly wrong. And we've had this conversation before. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Boyd, your hand is up.
I guess my question is, because I keep hearing, and Rich, maybe you can answer this. What I'm hearing is, say for instance, my Goodfellow project. So what you're saying is, because of this other plan from administration, we won't have anything done until that's completed.
So what they did was, and I want to go over this for your edification, is in Board Bill, I believe it's 120, which is the most recent infrastructure board bill that was introduced to the Board of Aldermen. There's a line item in there, and it says additional funding to address ADA traffic calming improvements with the 5 corridors identified in Board Bill 184, and that's for $14.5 million. And those 5 corridors were the original items on Union, Grand, Kings Highway, and Jefferson in Board Bill 184, plus a Goodfellow, which was added through the substitute through the amendment. So yes, you're correct that what would happen is we will have these consultants look at, utilize the funding for the paving, assuming this other board bill passes, as Alderwoman Tyus just mentioned, we would add that funding into it as well and look at this in a holistic approach to do, ADA improvements, sidewalk, curbs, paving, bump outs, lane painting, or modifications, things of that nature in one whole piece, as opposed to paving now and then coming back after that happened and saying, okay, now we need to come back in here again and do other items. The big question obviously is what if it doesn't pass? And I understand that.
And so I guess my frustration, when people constantly tell the older people to have community involvement and transparency, and we did that, and that I give it to those residents that lived in that quarter on Goodfellow that met for 3 or 4 years to get this plan out, and now you tell them they have to wait longer.
I understand.
I just think that's just so unfair, because why would you have the residents get involved and then you sit up and say, now you have to wait some more. So that makes us look bad as older people, because we're doing what our role plays for having community involvement. And then it's like we're lying to the community. We're telling them we're going to get this taken care of and nothing happens. So, and I told you that, Rich, I said, I just don't think that's fair that we have to wait, and they did all that work and now they still have to wait. I said, that's just not fair to them. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Flakes, can you mill during this time? I know you're wrapping up paving, but can you mill now?
I can mill, but that doesn't make any sense because milling just takes off the top 2 inches of asphalt. If I were
I
to
don't
do
want
that,
a full mill. I need some place and we can go and look at it. And you've done that for me before. And it's just some spots that at least it won't tear up people's cars if we mill it a little bit and make it a little even. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about taking a whole street and milling it.
We can do that, but typically, even now, what we do when we do the spot mill where we only take off a half inch or whatever, now you come to an intersection, you have kind of the waviness. We can mill that now, but we typically want to put sealer over the top of it because if not, it'll be a massive pothole field in the
Can
next
we
month.
mill and seal?
No,
Okay.
it's too cold. Or
Um,
we can, but it's going to be horrible.
I'm very irritated. Every week I'm gonna do a resolution talking about this on the floor of the Board of Aldermen and reminding the people every single week, this will be my topic, to read it and have it read out and talk about when we passed it and all the money, what it's not got done, because I'd hate it when people take my right away to have a conversation with them. I'm much easier to tell me the conversation. And so now, and it won't involve you guys, it will involve the administration. How dare you stop us from having anything? Now, if they tell us it's you guys made that decision without them, then it'll involve you. But every week I'm going to have a resolution talking about this because this is ridiculous. There is no way you can say, oh, well, the mayor was talking about it, so we were gonna wait 9 months and not tell you. There's a couple of ways you lie. One of them is about commission and the other one is about omission, and they're all the same. And so I feel like I've been lied to because this was supposed to be started right away and it did not. And so Alderwoman from the 14th.
You know, and I don't know, I haven't been up your way on South Kings Highway, but down here, it's atrocious. And part of that is due to the fact we've had Spire working, but it's gotten progressively worse. And the potholes hardly get filled unless I call and ask that they get filled. And it's like, what in the world is going on? It's just awful. And people are upset. I mean, I don't care if you live north or south, people are upset because they know we're sitting on a boatload of money here. And what is getting done? We can't pick up trash. And I'm on a rant here. We can't pick up trash. We can't pave the streets. We can't get them striped. I mean, it's awful. It is awful. And I just throw up my hands and say, I can't do it all. And then when, we say we're legislators, no, we're neighborhood liaisons is what we are. So anyway, and that's no intent to diminish the work that Mr. Bradley and Mr. Flake do, but it's hard being out trying to serve our public and nothing gets done. And especially when we went through the studies as Ms. Boyd and you have said, and it's been what, 2019 was the study. And I mean, I know we didn't have the money to do it all, but now we do. Let's get cracking. It's, as they say, shovel ready. So, and I don't understand the holdup, but if it's all about grandstanding, I'll sit down and let anybody grandstand all they want. Just get the job done.
Okay, Alderman
That's
McCarl.
all.
Thank you. Alderman McCarl, I'll see you back here. Hello? How you doing?
I'm back.
Okay, so we were just talking about what we think is a folly for us to pass a bill in February. And then the whole paving season was this summer. And now we find out in November that they've set on our money that we have allocated for all these months because the mayor had a bright idea. She was gonna do a study. And that's why I've had that encounter with every part of the city. I turned in LRA property that need to be tore down, that there's falling down on two sides in the back. And I got back from Matt Knuckles. Well, we're trying to get together and get a study. They don't understand. The city does not stand still while they get a study. Okay, it doesn't stand still. It keeps going and things get worse. So I'm just wondering what your ideal is when somebody is set on our money for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. And then we hear you haven't done anything.
I'm still waiting for the stuff to get done in my neighborhood. So I'm not happy about a lot of, I mean, my daily routine is generally 20, 30 calls about, especially right now, about street cleaning, but street cleanings, trash, you know. So, no, I agree 100%. I agree with what Alderwoman Howard said. It should be shovel ready. You know, that this is just not right. But anyway, I got back in the second half late, so I'm just more listening in.
Well, I want to thank you for not having public safety, because this was all too much with streets, personnel
no,
having to come back. So I appreciate it.
no, I'm back in case you needed me on the vote.
So
I'm here.
okay, so I guess my question, I do, Mr. Bradley, I'm going to send you an email because I want the consultants' contracts. I want what the request for RFQ is. I am going to ask you what happens if the studies are not the same, because I don't believe you, because the study that I saw for Kings Highway, you all had that all done. There was no reason to not do Kings Highway. You were already taking into effect curbs and everything else. I think you all did your job. And for that is coming from room 200, who has never been a member of the Board of Aldermen and does not understand constituent service. There's nobody in her office in room 200, from her to her director of director of operations, to all the little people who run around who think they know something. They don't know anything about stuff, and they don't understand that the constituents do not think this is okay. And so I'm going back out. I'm gonna say, this is when I passed it. I got all my stuff to show them when I got the money. So this is not gonna look poorly upon me. I wanted the mayor to be able to get things done, and I don't think that you guys did not do your job, Mr. Bradley. I think it's ridiculous that Kings Highway, maybe not up to my part, because we're still working on it, but from the parts that are already done, 28th Ward and 18th Ward, which comes right up to Martin Luther King, it just doesn't make any sense to me, okay? I am very regretful about that. And so now I want to ask Mr. Flake. I had asked you months ago about getting some of those shamel pots or something, because we are actually having people run up on the curbs in my part of Kings Highway, and they're hitting houses. And somebody got killed on my street at the corner of Kings Highway and Maffitt about a month and a half ago. And at that point, I was told that there were some more pots that were being ordered. I actually called the supply commissioner, Chris Carter, to say, and he said, yeah, we're doing it. What's going on with those pots?
This moment, I still don't have a contract in hand to get pots, jerseys, Legos, etc. It's been sitting in supply since, I believe, about February.
Right. Okay. So then
maybe before that.
Do you have the ability to move somewhere, have them every place, other places? Because I cannot let people continue to get, that's why I took this money, because people were getting killed on Kings Highway. We actually have no curbs at all. So and you were right in saying you can't just put one here, but if I start moving them from all over my ward and putting them on Kings Highway, do you have the capacity to do that?
Yes, I do. And
Okay.
I do have boulders are on contract, the large boulders, if those actually work in the area. Alderman Boyd uses a lot of those in her neighborhood, but the good thing about those is they're cheap and they're really hard to break.
Can we put them in the streets though?
No.
Okay. So we would have to put them right up on the median in the tree line. Is that how do you use them?
Yes. Median meter. Yes.
Okay.
Median and tree lines.
Okay. I really want them because at my street, we had one of those decorative lights that's on the property. I own the property, and they came all the way up into the yard. So they cleared the tree line, the tree, and everything else and knocked that out. So that's why I want the boulders, so they cannot even drive. I mean, the shamel pots, so they can't drive in that lane, because if they're driving in that lane, and that's where they hit that guy and killed him. And I think that's like 6 or 7 or something since we changed Kings Highway and we widened it back in the 90s. And it's just awful to come out your front door and somebody's got killed and laying out in the middle of the street is what I want you to know. And my condolences to his family and things like that. But to me, that's That's the city. We're responsible for that. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. And then to sit on money that we have like this, and it's not just streets, it's not just BPS, it's the money that we got from ARPA, it's tearing down buildings, it's the entire thing, it's not cutting grass, it is a epidemic of not doing things and telling everybody you got to wait till you catch up. If your kids are hungry and you say you got to wait till daddy makes $1 million before you can feed them, you're going to have some kids that are not going to be around. You have to make some decisions to get things done. And I know both of you all know that, okay? You cannot just wait to get a plan. You can be working on that plan, and you can even make suggestions about, well, this is what we think is going, so we can suggest that this happen, but we cannot not do anything. And so I do know that you are supposed to be, have you already paved around the stadium, Mr. Flake?
That should be finished Friday.
And so you can,
Today and should be done Friday.
okay, so you still are doing it. So if you milled a little spot over on Union, that's the worst spot, and I'm not talking about a big, then you could put some pavement down on it, even if it's not going to stay. Is that correct?
Possibly.
I don't know. Okay.
I'm not sure what next week's weather is. I haven't looked at next week's weather. So
Okay, but okay, so that's what I'm going to look at, because I have had so many people call me and I'm just like, oh, but we're getting ready to get this done. We're getting ready to get this done. So I see now that somebody thinks it's my responsibility to keep calling you all, and I don't. I think that if you're not going to do something in a season, and so I'm going to put in a board bill. Because when I first got here, Shane, Alderman from the 25th Ward, Shane Cohen, was talking about these trees he had paid for. And it was years and years, and he still hadn't gotten them done. And I just couldn't imagine that, because that is not how we used to operate when we first got this money. And now I think that the mayors think this is a way to control things, but it's not in the way they think, because they're going to take the hit. Because more and more now people are understanding that the alderman, once we appropriate the money, we're not controlling how that money is spent. It's like the mayor's walking around with the money in her purse saying, I'm going to just keep the money. And that's not okay for her and you guys either. And it's not a good look. So as I said, every week, I'm going to talk about from Gravois always all the way to West Florissant and how much money we had and why it's being set up there. And then talk about, well, we were going to get a citywide plan. Now that's what they said when I did the speed humps, and the current president was like telling her to telling the mayor to veto those speed humps. And then when we had 22 people that supported it and it was veto proof, she signed it. But what's so funny is the current president then went and got speed humps. So that's being a hypocrite to me. If you don't think that they should be done until there's a citywide plan, then you shouldn't get them done. But she ran and got them done. So this is painful for me to try to have to go and explain $7.6 million just sitting around. And that's not all, because it's another, how much is this? So did the LED streetlight conversions, did that get done? Is that being worked on or getting done? Because this is in this bill also.
My understanding is that that's under Jamie Wilson, and they were putting together the bid documents to bid for a new contractor for the requirements for ARPA. So yes, it was in process.
And the trash task force camera upgrades, they got done, right?
My understanding, what I heard lastly on that was the police department had specified the cameras. They were working with supply to bid them.
Okay, so I'm looking at my 7.5, then I'm looking at 3, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, 10 million more. So we're talking about almost $18 million just sitting around. So are these in interest-bearing accounts? Do you know?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Who could answer that? The comptroller's office?
Probably.
Okay. Mr. Blake, I am looking at, and I think you have under your purview many things, but the sewer lateral is under your purview, correct?
That's correct.
So I went and finally found the original bills on sewer lateral, which back to Geraldine Osborne and before, even before Geraldine Osborne. And I'm going to try to reach out to you next week because I'm going to propose some changes to that. And the change that I'm proposing is that we change amount of money, slight amount of money that we gather, because I would like to do something for senior citizens, because the sewer lateral can cost what? $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, right? On your personal property. Is that right?
Well, it's residents pay $28 a year.
No, I'm not talking about the part that's not on your private. I mean, I'm not talking about the street part. I'm talking about the private property. Do you know how much something runs if you have to get your sewer lateral replaced on your private property?
Oh, it could be anything from probably $2,500 to $10,000.
Okay, so I started looking out there because I have a 90-year-old woman who had to get plumbing, had to have a plumber come, and then it ended up being us that was the problem. But so what do we do when we make them get a camera and then it's our problem? Do we reimburse those people?
No.
Okay, we should, because that's
Well,
not right. So that's
by ordinance, the lateral belongs to the homeowner in its entirety. That's why we have an insurance program to cover it in our right of way.
But we make them, when they start complaining, we tell them you go get a camera and have it put down, right? And that costs a couple of $100, right?
That's because it's their line.
But we have an insurance program, but it doesn't cover them getting the camera.
No.
Okay, so, but that's what legislators are for, because to me, if it's on the part that we pay for, we should have to do it, okay? And so, as I was saying, and then when you look at the cost of this, if you're a senior citizen on a fixed income, and I know this because I've seen several senior citizens just leave that. And I started checking out, and there are places all over the United States in which they actually have programs where they let people pay a certain amount. They may pay the first 500 or first 1,000 or whatever, and then they fund it. They increase their sewer lateral intake, and then they fund it for senior citizens on a fixed income. So I'm writing up a bill, and I want to just sit down with you and whoever does it to talk about that, okay? Because there's a lot of people are just letting it collapse, or they're leaving their house because they can't afford that. We can't afford $10,000. And I know we had to replace ours when I first bought my house back in '86. And then we didn't know, oh, dude, while you're doing the sewer lateral, also do the water, which ran right by it. So then we had to go back 2 more years and spend another $3,000 or $4,000, which we didn't have it either, because we were, I was in law school just getting out. We had no money. So if there's a way that we could have a program that would address seniors over a certain age, and help them stay in their houses, that's what I want to do. And so I want to talk to you next week about what I've written, okay?
Okay.
Is there anybody that has any more questions about what is going on? So we kind of covered, let's just recap: 50/50 sidewalk, St. Louis Works budget, ward capital, and then parks and forest parks money is through forestry. Is there anybody that has any questions about that or was not here and want to bring up something? Because we had what do we do? We did from 10 o'clock to 11 this morning. And then and so now we're back for another hours. Alderwoman Boyd.
So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, you said parks and what now?
So the parks money, we have a separate set of funds for parks money that goes through forestry. Okay, that's not in streets or whatever. The only way that BPS gets involved is something that has to be a contract out. Okay, so and I actually have a printout of the money that was given to the parks from when we first started this in 1994 to when I left in 2003, and then I started back up in 2013 when I came back to talk current about how much money, and I'm in the process of getting those 10 years I was gone, so you can see the money, because it's Forest Park, Carondelet Park, Wilmore Park. What's the other one? Tower Grove Park, and then Fairground Park and O'Fallon Park. Those are the big parks that get some park money. And then we
Okay.
have a smaller park fund for money. Okay.
Okay. And so how has that money been distributed, or I'm sorry, because I missed that part.
So the parks money is distributed by a formula that Vince Shaman and his group wrote. And when they never could get it passed. When Freeman Bosley became the mayor, he did not listen to us and he passed it, not moving a comma. And so Forest Park has gotten more money than all the parks put together, okay? And we tried to tell him, don't pass somebody else's bill, but it was passed. He came in April and we passed it in November of that year, 93. And that's why I've tracked that, because I want him to see and other people to see what happens when you push somebody else's agenda. So
Okay.
Fairground and O'Fallon together haven't got what, it's embarrassing. So you just look at the chart and it's embarrassing, okay? And then the small amounts, that's what we were doing when they would ask us what we want to do in our parks and things like that. When you were the chair of parks, that's what happened with that.
Okay, that's the half cents and all of that.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's what I was getting clear.
Okay, but then we talked about the 50-50 sidewalk program, and BPS gets involved with the bidding. And right now, he said he had 2 contracts out. And I think he said $900,000 a piece or thereabout. Was that right, Mr. Bradley?
Yes, ma'am. The 2 contracts currently, we have, the streets is managing them, not about 900,000 each.
Okay, and then we BPS handles bids for ward capital amounts. And then so it was established since Nancy Cross put out that I was holding up the budget for St. Louis Works budget, that wasn't true. And so I was not given a budget until March of this year. So that's kind of what we had talked about before, when you weren't here earlier.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have anything else? Anything else? Yes, Mr. Flake.
Yeah, I just had a couple things to add about the street paving from earlier. Just to point them out. This year, I didn't get my equipment back until September 15th. So starting before then would have been very difficult or impossible for us.
What do you mean you didn't get your equipment back?
Because we sent it out November 1st of 2021 for winter maintenance.
Okay, so you have winter maintenance. So see, let me just stop you, because see, you're talking about something that we don't know that part. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We send our equipment out for winter maintenance, okay?
That's correct. So we sent our equipment out for winter maintenance because these are very large, very different piece of equipment. Our equipment service division can fix some of it, but at the end of the year, we typically send that back to the dealer. Or a dealer or somebody who actually specializes in this specialized equipment so it can get fixed correctly. The problem with that is the problem with everything at this point is they had very few mechanics actually working, and their shop struggled with COVID for a couple months. Not an excuse to have our equipment for almost 11 months or 10 and a half months or whatever it is. But I did just want to bring that up, that it did sit out there waiting for the professionals to fix it until about approximately September 15th. Typically, we would have that back beginning middle of April, and just with hiring shortages or employment shortages, I believe is what the deal is there. I've talked to them about maintenance this winter. They, of course, promised me they're going to do better, but we know what promises are good for. Not a whole lot of anything until you actually get the equipment back. And the other thing I did want to point out is there are 2 different, Rich mentioned the traffic study side. He also mentioned the ADA side. The ADA is a requirement. The traffic study isn't a requirement in order to pave this. So there, as we all know, these 5 corridors, 6 corridors, whatever it is now, there's a lot of wheelchair ramps on those routes. And those have to be made accessible, either to the 2010 standards or to the new guidelines. I'm not even gonna get into that part.
Depending on who you believe.
But
Right.
And it's obviously going to be a better job if those wheelchair ramps are completed before I come in and pave. I think I mentioned that last week or the week before.
Can I ask you a question though? So, because I have paved all my streets in the 20th ward except for 7. Okay. And when we paved streets, we had to do wheelchair ramps right then. It wasn't a if or, separation. It was, you had to do it then. That's why I fought so much with I'm not paying for wheelchair ramps again, because we had them all done. Okay. And when I called the state, MoDOT, and when I called federal people, they said, no, when you're asking, that doesn't have to be. Okay. So why couldn't we do them at the same time?
In theory, most of these are already done. In theory.
Okay.
But with that being said, we've all seen major intersections where tractor trailers rolled over it and completely destroyed it. Or who knows? I mean, we've seen them destroyed. You've seen them destroyed. We've all seen them destroyed. And we've also seen blocks that there aren't any sidewalks, so there are no wheelchair ramps. We've also seen it the other way where there's a sidewalk and there are no wheelchair ramps, both ways. So those need to be taken care of.
I understand.
We paved before where Rich's group has came in afterwards and put them in. Typically they go first and then we go second. But I think any way we look at this, it's some way there and it is a communication thing that it was going to get drawn out at least a little bit. Now, of course, we throw traffic studies in there. That's another bump in the road. And I think from Rich's standpoint and mine, we know this is going to be tough to get it done in the time frame we have. And we'd like to get started as soon as possible. And
So why wouldn't we have just done, since we know we have to do ADA, why wouldn't we have done ADA anyway? I'm just saying, moves the ball down the line, okay? And I don't want to use a football metaphor because I'm always arguing with my husband about too much football. So I'm not going to use that metaphor, okay? But if I was going to use it, I want to, okay, can we get to the 5-yard line or at least the 25-yard line or something? Or if we don't get a first down, can we get close to it? Why didn't we do something? I guess is my frustration.
And I really think when we come the next spring, I think there's at least a couple routes that you're probably going to see stuff happen fairly quickly on. Till we hear back from the consultants and all that, it's going to be questionable. But I know at least a couple of these were era projects back in 2009, 2010. Like Goodfellow from Delmar going north to some point. I know that was all redone, and it's on this list again. So there shouldn't be many ADA upgrades needed in that section. So it hopefully, unless there's traffic coming, hopefully that can go almost immediately. And there's also, there's South Broadway, North Broadway, some other pieces that have been upgraded in the last 10, 15 years that should meet the current standards without any question, unless something got destroyed.
Okay.
And as far as my paving is concerned, if we can pick out it, I don't like to do it. I don't like paving 15 blocks of one street and going and paving 10 more blocks of a different street and bouncing around. But if there are areas that we could start come springtime and hopefully do whatever the boundaries on that era project were for Goodfellow, let's say do that right out of the gate. And then we know 12 years ago, we did a North or South Broadway piece that's in need of paving, but it's all up to standards. Then we can bump to that area. And while Rich's group is either doing traffic calming or ADA upgrades on the other locations. And I'm sure there's plenty of work there for us. I guarantee that there's probably more work there than I can even think of at this point. But that I think my goal, Rich and I have talked about this a little bit, of trying to find at least me somewhere to go in the early spring. So we're getting this money spent. People are seeing improvements. And I mean, at most, everybody on this call or this Zoom meeting has heard me say this when we met in capital meetings earlier this year. And if they didn't, they heard me say it last week when I did everything I could not to sell asphalt this year, because I thought I was going to be doing ARPA routes.
Okay. So you were saying so you send your equipment out for winter maintenance, like much as you would do a furnace or air conditioner. You didn't get it back to September. So you were making the point that you wouldn't have got to do a lot of paving. Was that the point?
Yes.
Anyway, because I actually do write down notes so I can come back. Okay. So, but you would have been able to do some, and you did do some. Okay.
Yep.
And I am going to post this, and I do see some places where you say hold for various reasons, spire or water. And I want that to happen. I don't want you to pave. I sent to LRA over on Union and said, hey, these buildings have to come down. The back is down. If you're not going to tear them down, can you just get rid of the tap for the water and spire? And then when we pave, we won't have to come back and tear the streets up, because that's why I haven't been paving, because I'm like, okay, can we get this demolition done? So I do understand that is a smart way to do it, but not communicating is not. Okay. That's how you stay married, okay, or at least in a long-term relationship. I've been in one almost 50 years, so, and we're both very opinionated. And you just got to, if we got to go back and tell our constituents this is what's going on, then this is what we have to do. But when we're out there telling them, we got that money, it's getting ready to happen, and they're calling us and nobody has told us anything, then shame on you guys and shame on the mayor's office, okay? We have to have communication. Okay, so when you got back the money in September, so the things that got done in 2022, that's what you did after you got your equipment back in September?
That's correct.
Okay, and did you, in your wish list, any place, did you ever ask for any more equipment that you need? I know forestry has a big wish list.
Yes, our equipment service division has that list. There's also, I believe, a couple items included on the ARPA funding as far as a paver and a new paver and a new miller goes, since we'll be running the equipment we have to death, essentially, trying to get these 6 major routes done over the next 4 years. So yes, there's a paver and a miller, I believe, both in there. I don't remember what the price is off the top of my head, but I think the miller was around 800,000 and a paver is around 450, 500,000.
Okay, so in the ARPA funds for 184, did you have anything? I'm trying to look at it now to see if you had any equipment in there.
There would have been some streets equipment that is underneath of item H,
Okay,
which is non-police, non-fire. It's refuge, streets, forestry, and other parks and other, but
right.
the miller and the paver are not in there. It would have been dump trucks and other support type vehicles.
And was that covered in this, or should it have been covered if we had it in there? Which one is it?
So my understanding is, and Kent, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert on this, but I always was under the understanding that the paving equipment was bought through St. Louis Works, because that's the program that supports it. If I'm wrong,
Okay.
correct me.
Historically, very little equipment's been bought out of St. Louis Works, because I think the equipment budget in there is one, let me pull it up. So I'm actually know what I'm talking about. And the equipment budget in St. Louis Works is $90,000. So yeah, it would take me about 7 years 8 years to get just a new miller, or 5 or 6 years to get a new paver. So typically, I know it's been a long time now. We actually bought a miller or a paver 2 years ago. That was a mix of money between, oh, what was it? I think it was 3 years with the St. Louis Works, and I think we combined that with some equipment service capital or something. It was a weird purchase. And the last time we bought a Miller, I couldn't tell you, that was about a decade ago.
Can you send me your wish list?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Because I'm supportive of having equipment to get your job done. Makes no sense. Okay, if you're a cook and you have no pots, it's real hard to cook. Okay, so then
Here's the one thing I want to make a mention. I'm sorry to mean to speak over you, is that when streets can actually do the paving, here's the benefit that we all get out of this, is that the labor does not cost us anything because we're already paying it through salaries. So if we have to go out and do a contract and hire a contractor to do it, it's usually over 2 times the cost of what, Kent's crew can do it for. So that's why we normally partner and try to have streets do it, is it works much cheaper and it extends the money much further.
Okay, I understand. I remember when we had other people paving, and I remember when we started doing a lot of our own paving. I want to get to 4900 block of Theodore. I've sent you a couple of emails about that. So we need to find out, I guess we need to find out if MSD has a problem or water or something, because Kurt Scobie sent back, because we stopped doing the speed humps there. We stopped everything because they were having parts that dropped down. And Kurt Scobie sent back and said it was not a water problem, but something is making those holes continue to appear. And so have we reached out to the sewer people at all to find out if it's a sewer problem?
Yes, MSD's videoed that sewer main on Theodore several times, I think 2 or 3 times now. They found no issues. More than likely, I mean, because we have completed 3 or 4 sewer laterals over there over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I drove it, after our meeting last week, I think it was last Thursday, make sure the sidewalk was actually poured there at whatever address that was, and it was. I mean, to me, it really doesn't seem much different than most streets in the city. It's a little bumpy, but at the end of the day, you're going to figure out if there's going to be a couple more. I mean, I think every one of those laterals goes out to the front. They're all 2-foot clay pipes in the ground, 12, 14 feet deep. Every one of those leaks around the joints just a little bit, which is normal for 100-year-old pipes in the ground. But I don't see any major issue there at all, other than the ones that were already addressed. Like I said, there was 3 or 4 cave-ins over the last 2 or 3 years, and those have been addressed as they actually come up.
Well, we have a legacy person who lives on that street. She's 3rd generation. And so she said ever since she can remember that they have had these holes that appear. Where I live on Maffett Place, our sewer and water go to the front. I've been in my house for 36 years. We've never had a hole appear on any of those. And our houses are, all of them are 100 years old. Okay, those houses are much newer than our houses. That's why I'm concerned if a spring or something else is going, because then all of a sudden, boom. And I mentioned last time, we got right at the corner of Greer and Marcus. All my 30 years I've been here, I don't care how many times I have somebody put rock in that. If you go over there right now, it's a hole. Okay, and it's not a big hole, but it's a hole. And so to me, that's an indication if it's not sewer, it's a spring or something else. I want to go ahead and close that up. We've left that all year because we started doing speed humps back in March or April. So I wanted to get that. That's not fair to the people we've left it this long. So I want that, if nothing, you can report that's nothing to me. Can we get that fixed? Can we close that up so the people are not looking to go into another year, or is it too late at this point? Mr. Bradley and Mr. Flake, because they were getting speed humps.
So I would say this, if it gets closed up, I can still get speed humps done, but the closing up, Kent, I'll defer to you.
What do we mean by closed up?
Well, are we finished? Are we gonna sign off and say there's nothing else wrong? It's okay to go ahead and put the speed humps?
From my driving it last Thursday, I don't see any issue with putting speed humps in.
Okay, will you send that to Mr. Bradley, please, in writing?
Yep.
Okay, that way everybody see why, okay?
And it
And
was 4,900?
4900 block of Theodore.
Yep, got it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, again, so is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? I will be sending notes to both of you all, emails about the things that I would like to see. But if anybody else has anything to bring up, please do so. If not, I don't see any hands or anything. I want to thank both of you all for appearing before us. I don't need you next week. I'm going to move that we, what is it not?
Excuse me, Chairwoman Kaya.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring up I don't know if it's the same, but an issue about sidewalks repair. I have some sidewalks in the 17th Ward that the whole, I don't know, one of the squares are out, and people in wheelchairs and pushing baby strollers have to go into the street to get around that particular sidewalk that is missing. And this particular block has had this sidewalk missing for over a year. And I'm wondering when that sidewalk will be repaired.
So Alderwoman, let me ask you a question. Did you speak with your ward liaison about doing this?
This has been reported to the CSB, this issue, this problem, many months ago regarding
What
this.
he's saying is you should talk to your ward liaison. It's either Donald or the other guy.
Right, so here's the offer I will make you. It can't, unless you're addressing it, I'm not aware of it. If you send your ward liaison an email and tell them the address where it's at and copy me on it, I will tell them to get it fixed immediately.
Okay, so
We will pay for that out of ward capital.
okay, that's great. I just have a question.
Wait a minute, Mr. Flake wants to weigh in.
What's the address? If it's just a missing slab of sidewalk, it's probably either myself or water.
It's a slab. I will, let me look at it. I have it. I will send it to you immediately. I have it in my notes. I'm just wondering, then my other question is when somebody calls in a CSB service request, they don't always go to me immediately unless there is a problem and it rises to the top, such as this one. Like she called in, this slab was missing about a year ago and nothing had been done about it. I didn't know about it until a few days ago when she emailed me and said, you know, this slab is missing for a year. I see people in wheelchairs and baby strollers are going around it in the street. How does it get addressed once it gets to the CSB? My question is that it wasn't addressed when it was made known to the city regarding getting the slab replaced.
Yeah, I think that kind of depends. I mean, I can tell you more about it once I actually see the address. Typically, CSB gets it. They forward it immediately to whatever department it needs to be forwarded to. With sidewalks, they kind of get goofy every once in a while because water might have did work there. And it very well could get forwarded to me or Zach here because we're the ones that typically get sidewalk complaints. If that's the case and Zach or one of his inspectors actually sees it off the get-go, then we would forward it back to water saying, water, you did the work here. You need to have your contractor put it back. What it sounds like, it was probably either water or sewer repair would be my guess. Also depends on whether that was illegal water or sewer repair, because it could have been a water line replacement by a contractor that never got a permit, which would also be another problem. But if I actually had the address, I could, and then once you send it to me, I'll be able to explain that to you on on where it actually went and why it may or may not have went there. In short, though,
I got the address.
typically go straight to the operating department. I know with water and I know with us, their contractor's been way behind at water. And I'm down to one concrete finisher now. I had 3 9 months ago. So it's making our life much harder, but we're still trying to figure out how to get things done.
Okay, I just found the email from her. She sent it to me on Monday and she said, over a year ago, I sent a request to the Citizen Service Bureau asking when this sidewalk would be fixed. Still nothing has been done. I watch people in wheelchairs and parents with baby carriages try to navigate this situation. People using wheelchairs must go out into the street to either go around the obstruction or cross the street to use the other sidewalk. Can you help us get this problem fixed? So I'm speaking to you now about it. Again, she says over a year ago. And
He's asking for the address. Can we give him the address?
130 North Newstead.
130 North Newstead.
Because they're both saying they'll get it fixed for you. Now, I want to make a point. If it is the water department or the sewer or whoever, it should not come out of the automatic funds. They are supposed to replace, their contract is supposed to replace it, right? And when they tear up streets, they're supposed to fix the streets back when you have contractors doing that back to even surface. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. So you shouldn't be paying for that, Alderwoman.
Okay, thank you.
So Kent, if you get hung up on that one and you can't get anywhere with it, if you would respond back to the Alderwoman and I will work with her to get it done.
Okay, are you finished, Alderwoman?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Tyus.
Did you have something to say, Mr. Fleck?
Yep, I got an answer. We received a complaint back in June. This was actually somebody doing fiber optics. We sent it to the contractor on, actually came in June 1st. We sent it to the contractor on July 7th. And it doesn't look like anything's happened since then.
That's what she said.
It's actually not in front of it.
Yeah, she sent me a picture. I'll just forward you this email and picture.
Yeah, I have a picture from September 5th. Yep, September 5th. So I got a picture right here. I will send that over to the contractor as soon as we get off this call.
Thank you. Anything else, Alderwoman?
No, thank you. Thanks.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Yes, ma'am. Hold on, I'm trying to make you see my face.
Okay.
I just have a question because Ken, I know you all have been working on it, but I got so frustrated. It's been over a year with this lady at 6015 North Point. So, or when are we completing that? Because I told Donald, just use my ward capital money to fix this for this lady because it's a hole in her sidewalk. And I sent you all pictures and whole 9 yards. And then somebody said they were going to send their inspector or something. And I said, why we keep doing this? You all already know what's wrong. When can we just fix it?
Well, the problem is we don't know what's wrong there. We cambered the lateral. So we cambered the lateral there. Lateral's fine. MSD cambered their sewer there. It's fine. That material and that sidewalk sunk down what, 1.5 feet for some reason.
Right.
That we're not sure what that reason is because it's not going in either the sewer or the sewer. I talked to Donald last week or the week before about this, and I think he was working with Zach to come up with whether you guys were or whether BPS was going to do it or whether Zach was going to do it. I will reach out to them and see what we actually figured out. That's 6015 North Point.
Right. And I'm just telling you, I don't believe MSD because MSD is the core of that whole area. What the problem is, So I'm just telling you, me and MSD have had those conversations. So I've proven them wrong several times. So no, I know MSD is a part of it. So I'm just letting you know, Ken.
Oh, I argue with MSD probably more than anybody in the city, so I completely understand that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, it's 2:30.
Me, Mike,
Alderman Vaccaro.
I have just very quickly.
You're breaking up.
the-
Wait a minute, hold on.
See?
You're breaking up. You're frozen.
Oh.
Now,
Oh, I mean, Rich, am I still frozen?
um,
Am I
no,
still
I
frozen?
think you are, I can hear you now and see you.
Okay, because I could see. So I think has the notice to proceed on my sidewalks gone out yet?
Has
that
to
from- is that
proceed
from
on
me?
his sidewalks going out. He said Rich, right?
So if
Yeah,
you
I've
give
been
me
waiting
the,
for that.
if you give me the address, I can tell you, but I don't,
No, it's
I
the
don't
whole.
know which
whole
one.
list. It's my whole list of sidewalks. I sent the whole list in.
Okay.
It's the.
I'm gonna need to get back to you. I don't see it on this list. So I'm assuming no, but I want to investigate that before I say it.
Yeah, I turned these in, then the funding was jacked up, then they redid it and then they say, well, no, some of it's BPS, the other the street department, this is the tripping hazards.
I will look into it and get back to you quickly today.
You got my cell number?
I do.
Otherwise, I'll give it to you real quick.
No, I haven't.
Okay, give me a call.
I will. Give me a few minutes. We're done.
Okay, that's
Thank
all
you.
I had. That's my only question.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? I move to adjourn the streets meeting. Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The streets meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, committee members and Mr. Flake and Mr. Bradley. I appreciate you, and I don't need you next week. Thank you again.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, have a good day.